margin of any incumbent in 30 years. You run for president. That's the next step. And he said, well, why would you do that? It actually started 2 years after I left the Senate, when a little girl was born named Isabella. And she was born, as you heard Suzanne talk about, with a condition called trisomy 18, which is, if you look it up in the literature, it says incompatible with life. And when we were diagnosed 4 days after she was born, when they told us that's what she had, we went through the next 6 months in particular of her life fighting. Yes, fighting for her life, but more importantly, fighting the medical community to get treatment for her life. Because they didn't see her life as valuable as a normal life. Routine tests, I was blessed, I had a nurse for a wife. So she said, well, why aren't you doing that test as a routine test? I wouldn't have known that. She knew that. And I said, well, it's too expensive. What do you mean? You give this test to everybody. Well, it's expensive. You mean it's expensive for her? Because she's mentally and physically disabled, may not live long, quote, incompatible with life. And so we went through 2 situations, 2 hospitalizations in the first 6 months of her life. One for a brief period, just 3 or 4 days. She got a cold. And then she got another cold. And colds is ultimately what usually kills these little babies, because they just can't handle it. It just overwhelms them, just a normal cold. In both cases, she died. Her heart stopped, she stopped breathing, her heart stopped, and Karen brought her back. Second time was 5 weeks with a ventilator to keep her alive. And I saw the battles that go on, that I knew went on in the abortion clinics, or keeping people out of the abortion clinics. But I didn't realize as much that the fight for life and the right to life was also going on at the bedsides of the chronically ill and the disabled. And so when I left those battles, I happened to see this guy elected president who wanted to change the healthcare system. And as a person who was involved with the disabled, now when you have a disabled child, those of you who may have one or a relative, you become part of the disabilities community. You start to understand, you get involved, you find out, you speak at conferences, you go to conferences. And that's what we did. And we met people from all over the world. Because this is a very little niche disease that 99% of children who are diagnosed with trisomy 18 don't survive a year. And she's not 5, she's 6.5 years of age. She's married. Karen and I actually just wrote a book that's coming out in February called Bella's Gift that we encourage you to pick up. Well, I found out from all these moms and dads that I talked to from all over the world that while we had to fight in the United States, at least we had a fighting chance. Because if you come from a state, or excuse me, a country with socialized medicine, you got no shot. Because these are government-run programs, these are budgets, and they're allocated, and we just don't have the resources to spend on a child that's not going to benefit the state. Because that's what it becomes. It's about budgets, it's not about care. And so when Obamacare came around, I thought, I have to get out there. And so I just started to give speeches. I got on a radio program, started to host a radio program every Friday morning on the Salem Network, and did a whole bunch of things to get out there and giving speeches. And one day I was asked to give a speech in Iowa, so I said yes, and so I did what I normally do with my speeches in order to try to get attention. I always released it to the press as to where I was speaking and what I was speaking on. Not that it got much attention, but occasionally it would. And so I released my schedule. I was going to be in Illinois, and I was going to Iowa. I got a call from a reporter from Politico. This was in 2000, I guess 2010, late 2010. And they asked the question, I see you're going to Iowa. I said, yeah. So you're running for president? I said, well, I was asked to give a speech in Iowa, and I'm going to Iowa. Oh, so you're not running for president? I said, well, no, I'm going to give a speech in Iowa. I'm going to give a speech in Illinois the day before. And he said, oh, so you are running for president? I said, I am not running for president. I am not running for president. I'm simply giving a speech in Iowa. So later that evening, I'm at my mother-in-law's house with the family, and we're sitting there talking, and the next thing I know is my mother-in-law screams and points at the television and says, "Rick, you're running for president!" Politico published a front page article saying Santorum goes to Iowa considering running for president. So I show up a few days later in Dubuque, Iowa, auditorium this size, packed. TV cameras, C-SPAN, live. National reporters. And I'm thinking, this is a good gig. If I want to have my voice heard, this running for president thing, let them think whatever they want to think. So I went to New Hampshire. And then I went to South Carolina. And they kept covering me. And so I kept going. And one thing this made no sense. Nobody encouraged me to run for president. Nobody. Except my 12-year-old daughter, Sarah Marie. I always have to make a caveat. She gets mad when I say it. She did. But I remind you, I have 6 other children and a wife. So just give you an idea. She's not a groundswell. So here I am, out there, running. People would say, "Are you running?" I'd say, "No, I'm walking." I have no idea why God is leading me in this path, but it makes no sense. But that's what I feel like He's calling me to do. And so we went out, and everybody who was in the race was rising and, then falling and rising and falling, except me. So here it is, a month before the Iowa caucuses, and I'm getting, and everybody, I think Newt Gingrich was now up with Romney, tied with Romney. And that made everybody else in the field, but me, had been at least tied with Romney or ahead of him. And so all the press, as I'm traveling around Iowa, saying, "Why are you still in this race?" I mean, obviously nobody likes you. You haven't gone anywhere. I mean, you're sitting here at 2%, 3%, and you've worked harder than everybody else. Went to all 99 counties. By the end of it, I was at 385 town hall meetings, average attendance 12 people. But I kept going. And miraculously, 2 weeks before the caucus, the weekend before Christmas, all of a sudden, people in Iowa started to say, "Well, who do we really like?" Because folks in Iowa are different than a lot of Americans. They don't listen to the experts to tell them what to think. They actually meet the candidates, they have to get to know them, and they don't defer to the elites to tell them who can win and who can't. They actually try to pick who the best person is for the country. If we do anything wrong in this country, is we defer too much to people on Fox News or anything else to tell us what we should think. Well, the people in Iowa, thanks be to God, enough of them said, I think I'm going to vote for the Santorum character. And 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus, went from 3% consistently to all of a sudden, in one poll, 10% 2 weeks out. Then what happened was this really odd thing. People who liked me and thought I was a good guy and thought, well, I'd like to vote. I don't want to throw my vote away, though. They said, oh, it's at 10%. I can be for him now. And then we went to 15%. Then a few days later, we went to 20%. And then a few days later, we ended up at 25% and won the Iowa caucus by a robust 34 votes. 2 weeks after the polls closed. Because on election night, we lost by 8. And so we didn't get declared the winner until 2 weeks later. So I won, but nobody knew it. And we ended up winning, as you heard, 10 more states. Well, I'll tell you a story, closing, because I'm out of time.